It's a big week for the university. First day of class, if you haven't been over on campus, lots of activities. Good to see everybody back. And certainly a big week in sports as well, as we have our first football game on Saturday. So lots going on. And I know it seems like in higher education that summer's kind of that off season. And I can guarantee you that we haven't had an off season this summer. In addition to getting ready for just the academic year and the athletics for this fall, there's been a little bit of activity around conference realignment, in case you haven't noticed. Lots of activity, and I will say this, we have been, we are in, and we will continue to be in the conversation. And we are evaluating every opportunity, every option strategically. It is incredibly important to us. In fact, one of the key things that we look at is the new strategic plan, which was adopted by the Board of Trustees back in March. So everything we view through that lens. And in that strategic plan, you'll find a couple of key elements around athletics. First of all, athletics is incredibly important to our student experience. That's one of the things that can set a university apart. And so for us as a university, incredibly important, athletics provides value to the university through that student experience. And the second thing from athletics is it puts us on a national stage. And our vision is to be a nationally recognized public research university. That means we need to have national exposure. One way we do that is when our teams play across the country. And so when we evaluate these opportunities strategically, we're looking at how do we better that student experience? How does this put us on a national stage that we may not be on at this point? I do want to make sure that I call out, though, that as much talk as there's been around the conference realignment, we are members of the AAC, and our role is to be a good member of the AAC. They've set a good foundation for us, and our goal is to go out there and win championships. Now, I also wanted to give kudos to our commissioner, Mike Oresco, who, when we saw what happened with the Big 12 and the Pac-12 this summer, with the Big 12 coming in and taking some teams and the Pac-12 on the verge of falling apart, our commissioner has been very aggressive in going out and seeing how we can now position the AAC to be that next power conference. And so I want to give a shout out to him because he has been very, very aggressive in that. There is one thing, most of what we see is unpredictable. Probably the most predictable part is that the situation is fluid and the situation is unpredictable. And I think will continue to be. We saw all these movements a couple of years ago. We saw the movements this summer. We're seeing movements now, and we'll continue to see movements. I think this is something both in the conference realignment, but just the evolution of college athletics. We'll continue to see changes over the next coming years. And in the near term, we have to make sure that there's a couple of things that we do to position us well. And the first is that much of the conference realignment is built around media and money. And we need to make sure that our fans are continuing to support our teams. We need them out in attending games. We need them watching on TV and watching online. We need our fans to show up and show out. And we've got a couple of initiatives going that Laird will talk about with our Win Together and our 901 week promotions, but we really need our fans to show up. The second thing that is in the near future that we really need to push forward, and that is our stadium renovations. And we know from a couple of years ago with some of the conference realignments that our stadium upgrades are absolutely critical. And I want to thank the Tennessee General Assembly and the Governor's Office for their investment in the city of Memphis and its sporting facilities, and for the mayor and his team for their diligence in going and getting that money. We have had a plan in place at least a year, if not longer, on those upgrades for the stadium, and we really need to move those forward now to stay on time and on budget. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Laird.
Thank you, President Hardgrave. Thank you all for taking the time to be with us today. As the President mentioned, we have, I think, great momentum going into this year. I have not been shy with our staff and coaches to claim that I truly believe we have an opportunity to have an incredibly special year, if not one of our best competitive years in the history of this place. I also want to reiterate the President's comments about our appreciation of the competitive position and platform that the AAC provides. And I want to take a moment to sort of step back and talk about a few areas that the leadership of our university identified some time ago that we need to improve upon to better our position not only in our current conference but any potential or prospective conference here moving forward. One of the things we identified is that we need to establish a consistently competitive football program. As you all know, we've achieved that with 9 straight bowl games. We needed to improve our overall academic standing, and as you know, we've achieved Carnegie R1 Research Institution status. Candidly, we needed to address some NCAA compliance issues, and as you also know, we've addressed those, and I also want it to be clear that we have clear expectations to do so moving forward as well. We needed to demonstrate a comprehensive sports portfolio, and you've seen us invest across the board in many of our sports, and you will continue to see expectations to match those investments. And we needed to significantly upgrade our facilities infrastructure, and particularly the football stadium, as President Hardgrave mentioned, and as you know, we have plans with our city and state to do just that. So when it comes to conference realignment, I will just reiterate what the President shared, that we are very engaged, very aggressive in that engagement, and very much a part of conversations ongoing. Regardless of what takes place this summer, the change is far from over in college athletics. Whether it be conference realignment now or continued transformation moving across the board, and the best way for us to position ourselves for any opportunity is to continue to press our advantages, continue to invest, continue to win, and candidly, we need our fans to highlight those strengths by showing up to our games, watching our games, wearing the colors, doing all the things that they can do to support our efforts. However, as we've mentioned before, we recognize that buying habits, attendance habits have changed and continue to change, which is why you've seen some of the creative marketing elements that we've provided from a ticket offering standpoint. It's why you saw our Win Together promotion, and which was really designed as a creative way for us to engage our fans. It's why you see the Flex Pack, which allows our fans to choose which games they want to go to as they go along through the year. But I want to reiterate that as conference realignment gets so much attention, it tends to distract us, particularly us personally, in the athletic department, our fans, and the city about all the positives that we do have going on. Ultimately, the best thing we can do is keep showing up, keep winning, and keep investing, which is why it is so critically important that the city moves forward with the process to allocate the state funds to allow us to invest in the transformational renovation of our stadium. So we look forward to seeing everyone at 901 Day here coming up on Saturday, and look forward to winning together. I think with that, we will open it up to questions.
Yep.
Right?
Questions for neither of the gentlemen. Do you have a date on when the city is going to give you a date for the allocation, so you know what you're getting from the city, so you know we stand?
We do not have a date from the city, but we do understand that there are some important deadlines coming up that the city needs to manage.
Does that dictate the timeline that you guys have set in place? Is that dictated by when the allocations come out, or not?
Yeah, our understanding of the process is that the city needs to take steps through their approval process to move forward with the project that we've been working on together and planning for. And it's important that we do that so that we stay on track with the timing of the project. And it's important to also remember that the timing of project also dictates how much it'll cost, because if there are delays and that push further back, then it's gonna cost more to get the same kind of project done.
How much does the talk of the stadium project and any uncertainty over what the money is come up, if at all, in realignment discussions?
Well, as Laird said, one of the things that we know from a couple of years ago when there was a reshuffling was that the stadium was one topic where our stadium was just not up to where it needed to be. And so the state support of the stadium and the mayor's commitment to the stadium have been critically important in very positive discussions.
And what's maybe the biggest thing that comes up in discussion that you guys see is the biggest hurdle you have to overcome, whether it's reality or perception in the whole realignment process?
You know, it's a multifaceted discussion. You know, one of the things that maybe most people don't understand about the conference realignments is that the presidents and the chancellors of these schools ultimately make that decision, and there's many factors obviously that come into play. And where we think about it being purely athletics, it's not just an athletics play, and we have to make sure, first of all, that that conferences are aware of our athletic prowess. That you know, as was mentioned, you know, 9 consecutive bowl games. You know, I saw a stat. We were number 4 over the last 5 years in home wins in football. I mean, lots of positive things there. But there's the academic side is incredibly important. Again, chancellors and presidents are making these decisions. So one of the things that I spent a lot of time in talking with presidents and chancellors, making sure they know who we are. And I certainly have not hesitated to pick up the phone and call the president and chancellor and then say, do you really know who we are? And take that opportunity to make sure that they do know who we are.
Is there any sense, beyond saying the more change will come, you all have scenarios in your mind? Because I think for a lot of fans now, they definitely think, well, we don't even see where these things wind up to. Like, you playing behind the scenarios in mind, because it's not self-evident anymore.
Well, self-evident and conference realignment maybe don't go together, and I think that is part of the challenge. Certainly, I mean, you look at just what happened this summer. There was a lot of unpredictability in that outcome, right? So, do we play out scenarios? Absolutely, and we talk about a lot of different scenarios, a lot of different strategies, and we talk to a lot of people to make sure that it's clear that our case is made, but. That is probably the key point, is that you can't truly predict it. So you got to focus on pressing forward our advantages, doing all the things we talk about, controlling the controllables, but also making our case clearly with all the right decision makers. And ultimately, that's what we can do in our roles.
In terms of the stadium money, I know the number is 200, between 150 or 200. In terms of that amount, is it critical that it be 200 or that it be 150? And have you all thought or contemplated of doing any fundraising of your own to help pay for the cost?
We have thought and contemplated that, and we've shared different possibilities with the city about what we feel like we could help bring to the table. But we really need the city to make that final determination on their allocation first before we get into that. And I think it's critical that we invest as much as possible, because you know, as costs continue to escalate, we can see the pinch on the plans and everything we're trying to do. So, and it's also why it's critically important that we move forward as quickly as possible, because that's going to do nothing but get worse. So, I would not sit here and say a specific number is critical, although I would say as much as possible is critical.
You talk about things that you guys have needed to improve on and how you've checked a lot of those boxes over the last couple of years. Is the stadium really the last thing in your guys' minds that you guys can upgrade, and then from there let the chips fall where they may?
You know, I would say that it is the last really significant glaring issue that we need to address. But while we have a lot of advantages in our space, we need to continue to push forward and improve further on our academic standing and improve further on winning championships. So those are the things we can control and push forward. But we have so many key things that when you talk to people in our profession across the industry, they recognize the passion in the city, our geographical location, the recruits that we have in the area, all the things that we bring. And if you look at our viewership overall, it is really strong, and we project to be even stronger. So we're well positioned and doing all the things we can do, but we can't let up in that process.
In terms of, you're talking about this now publicly for the first time in a while, what is the concern level that you might get, to use the word you pinched in all of this a little bit, in terms of the money you were expecting and the money you were getting? How concerned are you that that might happen?
I don't think we have any real reason to concern that it won't happen. We just feel like it needs to move forward in the process, and that's why we're trying to draw attention to that, because we want to not lose out on the opportunity to maximize those state allocations and the taxpayers' funds to really help us in the most optimal way.
Have the plans changed at all in terms, not in terms of money, but in terms of from whatever it was, 16 months ago or whatever it was, when you have the plans changed in terms of what you're planning to do with this?
I would say a big picture in terms of the priorities and what we're trying to accomplish, they haven't changed, but in terms of the detail, they're changing a lot, because that's the process you go through, right? The first one was a master plan vision. This is a really detailed design, and it takes into account latest cost projections, all the other detail work that the engineers and all the specialists can do in the background. So yeah, it'll change a lot, but to the general fan overall, I don't think it'll change dramatically from what they're envisioning us accomplishing.
And then President Hardgrave, you mentioned in both the op-ed and here today kind of the things that they told you all a few years ago, and I know you weren't here yet, but that were kind of limiting Memphis in terms of advancing. What did they tell you this round in terms of what you guys need to do for a year from now, aside from maybe the stadium?
You know, it's when I first came in, one of the first things that we did, and I see our board chair Doug Edwards over there, and I want to thank our board for being incredibly active and an advocate for the things that we're doing and trying to position ourselves very well. But one of the first things we did was we went around and visited with several presidents, Laird and Doug and I, and we asked the question about what was in the conversation when they were talking about us. And as Laird said, there were three things that were really mentioned. One was the stadium was not up to where it needed to be in a top conference. Academically, we were not where we probably should be, and again, we've attained that R1 status. We still have work to continue to do there, and that's why we have a strategic plan that lays out what we need to do over the coming years. And then the third thing was NCAA compliance. I think the one thing that if there's a takeaway from what's expected of us, I think we just have to make sure people know who we are. We are a well-kept secret. And we should not be a well-kept secret. We have incredible things going on here. And as I mentioned earlier, I have no problem picking up the phone and calling the president, as I did this weekend, and said, do you know who we are? And when I tell them the things that we have going on here, academically, athletically, from the diversity of our student body to the quality of our student body to all the things, I think that's the thing that when we break through, we have to tell people our story, and we will going forward do a much better job. But we're a well-kept secret. I don't want us to be a secret.
President Hardgrave, two questions. First, who did you call this weekend? And second, let's say you get $225 million for the stadium and it's renovated. What is the lifespan of that asset? How long are those renovations going to be good for?
Yeah, I'll let Laird answer the second one. I'll just say I called the president. Yeah.
Which conference?
A really good conference.
It was a good try, very good try. I can't say that I know off the top of my head the exact lifespan. I know typically when you take on renovations of that magnitude, you are looking at decades in the future, and that's what we'd expect. I don't know if I would put a specific time frame on it, because I'd want to defer to architects and construction folks that really know that stuff, but it is a very long-term, massive investment. It's really going to transform not only what we can provide, but the way we look, which I think, in this whole context of what we're talking about does really matter.
Have you guys had conversations with any of the other teams involved in the money from the state as to how you guys can all collectively make this pie work for everyone involved?
That's really the role of the city. We of course have conversations with the Grizzlies and others all the time, because they're good partners of ours, and it's not lost on us that there's other investments beyond the stadium that could be very helpful for the Tigers too in the future. So we allow the city, of course, to manage that process, but we feel good about the relationships and how that's going to be engaged going forward.
Is there a drop-in date for construction to start at the end of the season, depending on the deadlines of the city?
I know the plan currently, as it stands, assuming that continues to stay on track, is to break ground in January following the Liberty Bowl. I don't have a specific date in mind, but I believe it's early to mid-January.
I think we're right at mid.
Yeah, and I do apologize. I've got to run off. I have to literally run through the fountain. So when I say I've got to run, I've literally got to run. So thank you all for being here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I can take a few more if y'all like.
Laird, he hit on kind of the perception. Do you feel like you guys are fighting maybe an uphill battle with some of the stereotypes that come, I guess, with the city right now, fair or not?
You know, I think one of the things I sort of appreciate about Memphis, in many ways, we have that chip on our shoulder and we feel like we're fighting an uphill battle. What I find, though, when I'm out there talking to counterparts across the country, that we tend to be more critical of ourselves than they are. People recognize the passion, the brand, the location, all those things I've said before. Are there stereotypes and issues about us? There are, just like there are already any place else, but I think the positives far outweigh the negatives.
Excited for Saturday?
Very excited for Saturday. I've told a few people that, you know, despite what's happened in the last few weeks, I genuinely don't recall a summer or a fall that I've been more excited about in many years, in part because the last few summers have been, I'm looking at Ryan back there, we shared some craziness, as you know. It seems like each summer in various ways, and this is a summer where I feel like he's got things teed up, our schedule lines out well. I really feel confident about what we're doing, not just in football. It starts there, particularly this Saturday. But you look across the board at our sports, this genuinely could be a very, very special competitive year for the Tigers.
Two things on the alignment issue. How much does geographic footprint come into consideration for you all when you're considering it? And how much of a factor is getting into, if it's possible, a conference that'll be on the right side of whatever split there is, as opposed to perhaps a remade conference that might not be that much different than what you're in right now?
Mm-hmm. So I'll ask the first one first, and that is, well, first of all, I would say geographic location seems to be less and less impactful in terms of conference decisions overall nationally, as maybe as it had in the past. I think for us, it's ultimately about being on the best platform we can be in, and being in a place where we fit, right? So I think that has to factor in and be a consideration, but it's certainly not the only one. And I think the thought about being on the right side of however the conference realignment thing lands over time, so call it the next handful of years, whatever that is really important to everyone. And I think that's why you see a lot of the change and movement that you're seeing now, is because people are projecting forward and they're seeing that the landscape is changing dramatically, which also speaks to why I believe this thing is far from over, right? And why we cannot let up and think that, well, if something doesn't happen this summer, that it's not going to happen next summer or the summer after that or the summer after that. If we keep investing, if we keep winning, which we know that's part of our obligation, and if fans show up and they watch us on TV, I mean, those are key factors in what we're doing. So we got to keep the pressure on, keep moving forward, and not give up, which I know that's not in our DNA anyway.
Would you guys be willing to go into what is perceived now as a Power 5 conference or whatever you want to call it, as opposed to something that in reality is no longer Power 5 status?
I think you have to look at it more that in every scenario, we're going to look at what is best for the University of Memphis, and you truly can't predict all those potential outcomes. So again, we are in a very strong, very competitive conference that we are positioned well in, and that provides us a great platform. But just like anyone and any organization, you're always going to look for opportunities to improve yourself. So as those opportunities present, we're going to analyze them and we're going to make the best decision for Memphis.